second event or on our second day of the Sales Reimagine, our 3-day Revenue Excellence Summit. My name is Eduardo. I am a Community Events Manager at the amazing Modern Sales Pros. And if you're not familiar with MSP, you are 100% missing out because Modern Sales Pros is the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and sales enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. And our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer the toughest revenue questions out there. And if you're not a member yet, you'll be invited to join after the summit. And I hope you will, because I want to see you around in our amazing events. This summit, it would not be possible without our amazing sponsors who you see on these slides. So kudos to them for making this happen. These amazing organizations are not only sponsoring this specific event, but the full 3 days and 17 total events of the summit. You heard it right, 17 events with amazing speakers. And to learn more about these innovative companies, click on the sponsors booth tab on the top of this event page and check out all the ungated valuable resources that our sponsors have made available just for us this week. There also might be some fun surprises and giveaways, so I would make sure to check the sponsors booth over there. And oh my goodness, look at this 3-day agenda filled with opportunities for us to completely reimagine sales. Whether you are in sales, marketing, customer success, or product, there will be content for you. We are about to hear from Kelly and Pete, but if you want to check the full agenda of events for the rest of the day and the week, visit the agenda tab at the top of this event page to see the full schedule and tune in the future events. But for right now, let's focus on this one because that will be amazing. So I'm gonna go over some housekeeping notes and I'm gonna pass the mic to P. He will introduce himself and Kelly, and then we're just gonna start having fun. So let's go to the housekeeping notes. This event is being recorded. We cannot leave this content go out in the ether. So we're gonna have the recording available in the Modern Sales Pros website right after the event. And you also will receive a follow-up email with links for you to check out the recordings and the key takeaways. And once you familiarize yourself with GoCast, please make sure to use the chat and talk with your peers over here to send questions to Kelly and P. And you will make sure that you're being heard and we will see you commenting in there, and you're gonna pump Kelly and P to share all the knowledge that they have. Um, and lastly, go ahead and check out of the amazing sponsors and speakers tab up here so you can get as much as you can out of this event. So let's get started. I'm going to pass the mic to the one and only P. Kazanji. He will be hosting this talk with Kelly. P, I'm going to pass the mic to you, and I'll be back later for some outro notes. But for now, let's have some fun. You can take away.
Awesome. Thanks, Eduardo. That's an amazing cat shirt. I got to be honest. You definitely win the shirt game today. Kelly, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Pete. It's great to see you. Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, I'm super excited to talk about, have this fireside chat, talk about your background, kind of the work that you're doing at Gong, some of the principles around culture-driven sales leadership, a bunch of other kind of great things that we're going to be talking about here. But just a couple of introductions for folks. For folks who may not be familiar, my name is Pete Kazanji. I'm the founder of Atrium. Atrium makes data-driven sales management software that helps sales managers, so AE, SDR, AM, CSM managers use data to improve team performance. That's kind of what my day job is, in addition to also being one of the founders of Modern Sales Pros. Prior to that, I kind of got into sales leadership, sales excellence through my last software company, Talent Bin, where I went from being a business generalist founder to being our first seller, our first sales manager, and then eventual sales leader. Ended up having around a 20-person sales organization, but before we were acquired by Monster Worldwide in 2014. And then subsequent to that, ended up writing a book on startup sales called Founding Sales. So that's just a little bit on me. Kelly's been at it a little bit longer, a little bit more storied career than that. That's for darn sure.
That was really story, Pete. I feel really flattered. I'm lucky to talk to you.
But for folks who don't know, Kelly's has an amazing background. I mean, even everyone obviously is familiar with Gong, but there's another very impressive organization called Tableau, where Kelly was the first seller there. I think like under the first like dozen employees or so, first seller there, and had like a 10+ year run there. At this point, like Tableau sales organization must be like north of 1,000 people at this point. And then prior to that, had a number of other sales leadership roles as well. So we're really lucky to have her here to kind of share some of her insights and kind of how she thinks about the operating principles of successful organizations, the cultural principles of successful organizations, so on and so forth, and how that gets implemented at Gong. So, Kelly, I mean, I know that you had before you took to market, kind of like one of the initial kind of ceiling breakers of BI. You kind of had like a interesting career arc before that. Maybe you can share a little bit of that with our audience here today.
Yeah. Well, sometimes people ask me my story. How did I get into sales in the first place? And I'm the type that I always was in sales. I loved the idea of being able to interact with other people, to solve their problems, but most importantly, to hear their stories. And I started my career with this crazy thing I did in college where I worked for a company called Southwestern, and I sold educational books door to door. So while people were doing in their summers in college, they were doing the internships or lifeguarding or wherever, I was carrying around a 25-pound book bag that had study guides to help families help their kids and help kids to do better in school. And over the course of my 4 summers in college, I actually sat down with over 12,000 families. And that taught me a ton about people, about connecting with others. But it also taught me that I just loved entrepreneurship because I was running my own business, selling educational books door to door.
Sure.
And I loved sales. And that really got me started. I just wanted to be able to interact with other people and hear their unique stories. And it's creative and it's new, but it also drives so much about human connection. And I think that's one of the cool things for everyone listening today. I love spending time with other salespeople because salespeople are not only the ones selling the wares of whatever their product does, but we're the face of the company. We're connecting with our customers, connecting with our prospects, and being able to really drive those relationships that help to show like what is a company's why. It all comes back to the people, and that's how I got started.
I love it. So was your territory Palo Alto? Because I know that you went to Stanford undergrad just a couple of years before for me. Was Palo Alto your territory? Because that would be a very compelling territory to go shopping.
No, it actually the company, because you're trying to start your own business in unfamiliar territory, and so they send you to a completely different location. So I was always in upstate New Jersey and in Connecticut and New York is where I was selling books. And then after I sold books, I decided, hey, I have a future in sales. This is what I want to do. I want to do something entrepreneurial, want to do sales. So I ended up working first for Dale Carnegie training, where I was actually teaching the course of how to do public speaking, how to do sales. After that, I sold residential mortgages for Bank of America. So, I've sold books, I've sold training, I've sold mortgages in FinServ. Then I decided to go to business school and did a little bit of management consulting at Bain and McKinsey, and then learned, I'm an operator at heart and I wanted to go back into sales. And so then I went to a small startup first. And then, as you mentioned, Pete, I joined as the first salesperson, employee 10, 1 month before we launched version 1 of the software at Tableau. I was there for 12 years as CRO. Official title is Executive Vice President of Sales. Grew it to 3,400 employees, 0 in revenue to almost $1 billion in revenue.
Wow.
And then I decided I wanted to be able to help companies grow in a different way. And so after my Tableau chapter, I sat on 6 different hyper growth tech boards. I taught a class on go-to-market strategy at University of Washington that I had created, launched my thought leadership platform, which is culture-driven sales. And one of the boards that I joined was Gong. And then here I am. That's the story.
There you go. I love it. That's quite an arc there. Yeah, and if you guys don't follow Kelly yet on LinkedIn, you're missing out. And I think we're going to drop Kelly's link here in her LinkedIn link here in the chat. So you definitely should follow her because she definitely posts a lot of really thoughtful, insightful things from all the storied experience that we just talked about. And then I guess you also have your own website as well, culturedrivensales.com, which I think will also drop a link for there where they can, see all the other different resources and what have you. And get on your email list for when you eventually write that book, right? So
I do. Well, now I'm doing a monthly blog, which is
okay.
called The Edge, and it's on Gong. And I have 3 different drafts of books. So at some point I will publish those books. But for now, please subscribe to The Edge. And we, all of our sales professionals, go-to-market professionals, we should all stick together and learn from each other. So I love following all of you on LinkedIn as well.
I love it. Well, okay. So it sounded like, I mean, not to characterize this in an untoward way, but it sounds like you kind of like retired from sales a little bit there, and you're kind of doing your board work and kind of teaching and what have you, maybe taking a breath there, but now you're not anymore. you're the president of Gong, and so maybe you can share a little bit of like what inspires you to kind of like come off the bench, right, and get back in the game in a very meaningful way there.
Yeah. Well, first, my version of retirement was probably different than other people's version of retirement. So I, quote unquote, retired from operational work at Tableau. Yep. I was on 5 different boards. I developed my course that I was teaching on how to transform the world of sales. I launched my thought leadership platform called Culture Driven Sales, which was around the same topic. And then I was involved in maybe 10 or 12 different organizations to drive more women on boards, diversity in boards, diversity in leadership. So I was juggling all these different things, advising and board work. And what was I focused on? What I had felt like my own purpose and mission is to help companies go grow and scale. That's what I love doing, growing and scale. That's why I was on these boards. And I have 3 areas of passion, really 3. So number 1 is I'm super passionate about go-to-market and sales, like all of us.
No.
Modern sales. And I totally believe that the world of sales and go-to-market is so ripe for transformation. And there is a better way that we can engage with our customers. We can be more purpose-centric of how we do things as a team to make our companies a great place to work, and then also to engage best with our customers. So much of what I do is about transforming go-to-market and transforming sales. Number 2, I'm passionate about data, about how we can use data and now AI on top of data to help companies do more, to help people be more empowered, to have people understand the truth and reality of what's really happening. So number 1, transform the world of go-to-market. Number 2, data. Number 3, huge area of passion for me is culture. Right. That's why I have a thought leadership platform called Culture Driven Sales. It's all about how do you put people at the center. It's not about just operational efficiency and effectiveness. It's about putting people to empower people to bring their best authentic self to work, and to be able to use that culture to emotionally connect with our partners, with our customers, with our prospects, in that same way that I talked about how I did it at selling books. So it really came down to these 3 things: go-to-market and sales, data, and culture. And that is how I picked what I was doing. That's how I picked my boards. And I joined the board of Gong, and I was like, wow. Yeah. And of course I'm going to join this board. Like, what is Gong about? Gong is about transforming the world of go-to-market and sales for the better by infusing data and AI, and doing it in the way where you put people and culture at the center of everything we do. And once I was on the board, I was like, oh, Pete, this couldn't be a better fit for me. Like, this is like my calling. Everything that I had been working towards for over 30 years was wrapped up in this company called Gong. And I felt like I just needed to have more. And so then that's why I jumped off the quote unquote bench of board director,
quote unquote,
president and COO.
You stop working on like 24 things, 10% of your time. So if, for being 250% like overclocked to going to one file, although you probably still have your board work. Yeah. I mean, every time I hang out with gongsters, right? I'm reminded how delightful, and a lot of it obviously stems from the founders. Ahmed and Elon are fantastic folks, and who are like multi-time founders, and so certainly understand the importance of like the operating system of the organization, which is like the culture, right? Like, having a great product is all well and good, but like, what delivers a great product? It's the humans who make it. Right. And then take it to market. I really enjoyed your comment about like modernizing sales and kind of innovating there, because I mean, that's pretty much like like what modern sales is all about. One of the things that I think sales kind of gets a bad rap, but largely from people who don't kind of know what it is, like what like true, like consultative, thoughtful, like not zero sum, but instead like 1 + 1 = 3 selling like actually looks like. And oftentimes one of the things I talk about in my book is that like sales people are extraordinarily important. Not only are they the front end of your organization and like your emissaries to the market and what have you, but they also make the economy run. Right?
That's totally true. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like people don't really think about this. I forget who it was who the quote was, is like, nothing happens until someone makes a sale. Because at the end of the day, what salespeople are is they're like economic agents that are constantly like, sussing through the market looking for pain that can be resolved by a given solution, right? And so like they are the ones who are literally driving in. It's one thing to have like a better mousetrap that's like sitting here over on the shelf. If nobody adopts it, that's a huge problem, right? And so salespeople are extraordinarily important in driving innovation forward in the world by actually making sure that innovation finds its way to market, gets in front of users, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, thank you, Eduardo. Eduardo is commenting in the chat here that was Thomas Watson, the founder of IBM, whose quote I was mistaking there. Okay, got it. So Gong is essentially just like the amalgamation of this, like the triad of things that makes Kelly super stoked. For folks who maybe the one person in the audience who's not familiar with Gong, maybe you can share a little bit about what Gong is all about. Because I mean, in fairness, like the mission has kind of expanded, the vision is very large, and of course, like now there's multiple different products and what have you. Oftentimes people think about like call recording or whatever, but obviously Gong and peers are much larger than that now. So maybe you could share a little bit about how Gong goes about this.
Sure. Well, Pete, one of the things I think is so important about being in sales is to be able to tell stories. So I'm going to take us on a little storytelling bit here.
Perfect.
So with Gong, our mission is we unlock reality to help people and companies reach their full potential. Right. So what does that mean? So let's talk about unlock reality first. Many companies now, they want to make data-driven decisions. Everyone wants to make data-driven decisions. The challenge is that there's so much data, and the diversity of data is growing, the size of data is growing, all the different sources from where you get that data from is happening everywhere. And so what happens is, because people don't have like the full version of the truth, they tend to make opinion-based decisions way more than they ever would like. And so people are making opinion-based decisions. And why is that? Why is it so hard to get the data? Not only is it diverse and changing all the time and big, but it also is very, it's tedious to be able to get all of the data. I mean, think about even if you're in a CRM, a sales rep has an hour call, and then they have to take time to type it in. And when they type it in, maybe they have an hour call and they put 2 minutes worth of data in. And then that's opinion too. It's not even the truth. So the first is people are opinion-based. It's too tedious and manual to actually get access to the data. So what does that cause? It causes a whole bunch of lack of alignment There's silos all over because people are making different decisions because they don't have the same view of the information. So what is it that people want? And then we'll get to what Gong does. What people want is they want to make reality-based decisions based on data.
Right. Yeah.
Of course, I mean, that's what people want. 2, they want to be able to empower their teams, whether sales or CS or product, to do their jobs, to take away the menial, tedious tasks that people don't like doing and just waste time. It's not efficient. And then 3, they want their teams to be aligned, especially in today's world where like the economy's changing. How can we be more aligned? Right. So people want reality driven. They want more autonomous to be more effective, and they want aligned. So now what is it that Gong does? What Gong does is helps companies to do that. We help to unlock reality because we're really the only product out there that integrates with over 100 different interaction points with your customers to bring this all into a reality platform where we have every single email, text, Slack, chat, recorded call, Zoom meeting, Google Meetup, Teams, all of that, and everything in your CRM and all these other integration points into one system that tells you what's really happening. And then we serve up automatically insights and understanding that tells you what's happening with your customers that helps everyone be much more effective and efficient. That's what we do.
Just a couple things, and you do that with 5 engineers. It's insane. No, it's obviously like hundreds and hundreds of
engineers. Big team of engineers. You know, we have Gong is very, very big on innovation, and we're churning out new stuff all the time. And this is one of the reasons I was so excited to join full time and come off the board, because the pace of innovation has to be swift. Things are changing all the time, and we're just churning out things. So I can't take any credit for that. That's our engineering and product team are absolutely phenomenal.
Right. We'll give Elon a big high five. Yeah. I mean, I think that like when you think about the kind of the arc of data, if you will, and like data-driven behavior, I mean, you've obviously had a front row seat to it. The way that we kind of talk about this at Atrium is one of the reasons why making data-driven decisions is so challenging is we actually have this like Maslow's hierarchy kind of concepts in like one of our sales decks, whatever. And if you think about the things that you have to do is, one, you have to know the questions you want to answer, right? Like what metrics should I pay attention to? The next thing is now you actually have to collect the relevant data in order to ask those questions, right? Like data preparation, et cetera, et cetera. Then the next thing you have to do is you actually have to build the views in question. Right now, the good news is that like, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, I guess maybe 20 years ago at this point, like this is where something like Tableau and the kind of like the cloud-based successors of Tableau were really helpful, because they made it so much easier than like the old version of that with like, old school BI or on-prem BI or whatever, but you still had to do those steps. Then the problem is that even the next step after that is like, even if you create a wonderful like dashboard or views or what have you, now humans have to use their eyes to interpret that. And that's actually really challenging for a lot of folks. Like, for your prototypical like data analyst or like Tableau jockey or like Looker jockey or whatever, like that's not like, that's the thing that they do. For like us normal human beings, kind of like reading the tea leaves of lots and lots of like charts and graphs and what have you can end up being very challenging, but it's really important, right? Because you have to, monitor that. And then moreover, you have to reason against it, right? Like go across the decision tree, say, hey, this rep's, has a bookings problem. Where's that coming from? And so that muscle is growing in the sales world right now, because historically you never really needed to have that muscle like as a sales manager, as a sales leader, because like there really wasn't any data to be interpreted. But now that muscle is kind of becoming table stakes. Now the good news is there's providers that help with that. You guys are in that realm, Atrium's in that realm as well, but it's something that like is becoming a required capability of managers and leaders as well.
Yeah, well, Pete, the interesting thing is, we're here talking about sales and Gong, and people are thinking about revenue intelligence and all that, but it's actually really important to think about what has been the arc of just data and the evolution of data. So you talked about that. Let's spend like just another minute on that. Is first companies were saying, is it even feasible to collect our data? That was the first thing. People weren't even collecting. So they start collecting. And then it was, well, we need to turn out some basic dashboards and reports to be able to have some base level of understanding. So people had these like report teams that were churning out all of the business intelligence. And then when I was working at Tableau was revolutionizing the world of data by saying, how can we empower more democratization of data? How can we give more self-service where people can actually ask their own questions and be able to answer them without only having a very small number of people that know how to operate the systems that generate the answers? Because people asking questions weren't the ones that knew how to operate. And Tableau was that next evolution of empowering people to ask their own questions with their own data and information. Now what's happening is data is so big and so complex that even if people have the tools to be able to ask their own questions, sometimes they don't even know what questions to ask. And sometimes, even if they know what questions to ask, there's just so many things to figure out. This is where AI on top of data is the next generation of data, because we need to leverage technology to be able to say we're collecting all this information, but what good is the information if we can't get insights and information out that are going to help us to do better? And that really is what Gong is all about. We're a data company, we're an AI company that helps to surface insights and understanding that can help you be more effective internally and better understand what's going on with your customers, which everyone wants, of course.
Yeah, I mean, essentially what's happening is like the frontier of like data-driven behavior, we call it data-driven sales management, is moving to the interpretation layer, right? Because like now the data is available. Previously, you could like, there was no visualization available because the data wasn't available or collected, and then moreover, the creation of views was problematic. Now they're like, oh, we actually can create lots of these, views and reports and what have you. In fact, there's so many that now as a human, I have to interpret all this. Like I have to open all these doors to figure out which one has like a fire behind it, versus having something monitoring this for it and come to me and say like, hey, Pete, like this SDR's got a problem over here. You should go investigate that. Or that, hey, Pete, this AE's got this problem over here. You should go, take care of it in this regard. So allow it like, technology allowing people to do that, or like do that for them, so they can spend their time kind of like as a manager, as a seller, rather than taking lots of notes. We want to be customer facing and having persuasive conversations and like, driving good discovery and whatever, versus like clicking lots of boxes. As a manager, what we would rather be spending our time doing, or the most effective use of our time, is actually changing the behavior of our team and coaching them up, rather than trying to figure out what the problem is that needs to be remediated. One thing that I want to change gears a little bit here, because you talk a lot about like leadership and culture and what have you, and I was kind of alluding to that around, effective sales management, effective sales leadership. Obviously, we're looking at it from the standpoint of a data-driven lens, but I think one of the things that you think about quite a bit is company building, core values, leadership principles, and what makes a healthy organization. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we talked about it a bit at the beginning, but to double click on it is, especially in today's world where things are so complex and we're having headwinds coming at us in all different places. We're in remote work, there's economy, there's social unrest, all this kind of thing. More now than ever, people want to be connected to their companies. They want to be connected to the company's mission and purpose, and not only the employees, but the customers as well. Sure. And so I think what's happening is, oftentimes when people were talking about sales historically, or even high performance organizations, everyone was always talking about operational efficiency, operational effectiveness. Believe me, everyone's talking about that now, and we should be. But it goes higher than that. It is, what is the mission of the company? What are the core values of the company that help to dictate how people, or to inform how people interact with each other and how they interact with their customers? So for instance, at Tableau, our mission is we help people see and understand data. At Gong, our mission is we unlock reality to help people and companies reach their full potential.
Right.
And then you want to hire people that are super passionate about it. Like people wonder, well, Kelly, it is totally obvious why you're at Gong. Like unlock reality, help people and companies reach their full potential. This is what I want to do.
That's
in
you.
Market and data. And people that are here feel tied to them, to the purpose. They're tied to the mission, but then also the operating principles, or other companies call them core values, help to really inform how we interact. Like our number one operating principle at Gong is raving fans. And for those of you on the call that are on this meeting that use Gong, hopefully you feel the same way. We want our customers to be raving. And so our team will do whatever to make sure we're building and delivering great products. We're delivering a great customer experience, and people are able to really unlock their own reality and get personally better for themselves and for their teams. We also talk about, we challenge conventional wisdom. This threads through everything we do. And we have purple and pink as our colors. We have a dog in our brand. We did a Super Bowl commercial. I mean, these are things that are atypical for typical B2B software companies, but we're challenging conventional wisdom. And we talk about act now and want more and enjoy the ride. I mean, everyone's working hard. So we have Gong recharge days at the end of every quarter where the whole company shuts down for 2 days at the first 2 days of the next quarter. So people are taking their time off. And we bring up these operating principles all of the time that help to inform how we're doing work. And what this comes down to is many companies are very good at the what and the how. They talk about what they do. They talk about how they do it. They don't talk about why.
Why? Yeah.
Why is so important. It's the essence of a company. It's the essence of why we exist. It's why founders decide to start the company in the first place. And this is what I teach in my class. And this is the premise of culture-driven sales, is it really all comes down to the why and the cultural elements. And that allows people to emotionally connect with other people and companies to emotionally connect with their employees and with their customers. So that's what it's all about. I think it's really, really important.
Yeah, we have one of our board members is a gentleman named Brett Queener. He used to run sales operations at Salesforce. He did a bunch of other stuff too. He ran sales operations there, and then also, ran a number of their products there before becoming the president of Smart Recruiters. And one of the things that he always talks about in our board meetings is about, like, he worked at Siebel originally, and then he went over to Salesforce, and he talks about how Salesforce built a mission, right? Like they built a movement, right? Not just of the customers, but also the employees as well, right? And so having shared principles to align around, so people say, yes, that is the North Star that we're marching towards there, ends up being a very important thing. Because one of the things that I like to say to our engineering staff here is that we use code to program computers, but words and stories program humans, right? Essentially give people a direction to follow. And so paying attention to those things ends up being really important. I think actually we have a couple hyperlinks on Gong's operating principles and leadership principles that we're going to go ahead and drop in there. Were the leadership principles, is that a different thing than the operating principles? Maybe you can unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, well, so the operating principles are really for everyone in the company, right? And so are the leadership principles too. But we asked ourselves, maybe it was about a year ago, right around the time that I joined, it was, hey, we have all these managers. You don't have to be a manager to be a leader. There's people who are leading every day. And almost everyone in the company is leading every day, whether you're a manager or not. And how is it that we are helping to really drive the company forward, but also think about how we're leading other people? So some of the things that we talked about that are different. So operating principles, I talked about some of those: act now, favor the long term, challenge conventional wisdom, no sugar, having respectful, open, candid conversations is one of ours. Our leadership principles are even higher, of how we actually think about building and growing the company and how we think about managing and leading our teams. So those are: insist on great talent. This is a huge mistake companies make as they scale. They're so thoughtful about who are their first hires. And then as they get larger, sometimes it's like, oh, we're growing so fast, there's so much work to do, I have to hire someone. I have to. But the bar should actually get higher and higher as you scale, because you want people that are going to align with those operating principles and core values. but you also want to create and maintain an Olympic team. And people are your Olympic team. So you want the talent to be high. We share a lot. We like to be really transparent with as much information as we can. We cultivate belonging and diversity. A leadership principle is being really thoughtful on diversity in all different ways: diversity of thought, diversity of experience, gender diversity, racial diversity. We also talk about empowering our team. These are some of the leadership principles, but you can go take a look at that. I think, to go back though, Pete, to one of the things that you had mentioned when you're talking about the why, oftentimes what happens is the reason that companies end up falling into this trap of the what and the how, they're not really thinking about what motivates people. They're thinking about ROI and value and all that, which is truly important. But sometimes those kind of fall flat because companies focus on selling to other companies.
Right.
And they're saying, what does the company care about? But guess what? Companies don't sell to companies. I mean, Pete, who sells? Who sells to who?
A human sells to another person who's sitting in that seat, who can make that decision, right? And they obviously have the best interest of the company in mind, but they also have, their own personal interests, their own, growth, all those sort of things. This is something that I coach my reps on all the time. Is one, think about like what's in it for the individual themselves, whether it's the champion or the economic buyer or what have you. And then secondarily, we oftentimes talk about the concept of there's like lifetime value of an account. What we talk about, and I push on my reps quite a bit, is the lifetime value of the contact, like the person, right? Because what we want to have is like people who buy again, again, and again.
Yeah, I'd make it even simpler to that. And there was a chat that just went into the chat saying people often buy on emotional level. This is what the difference is. Companies don't sell to companies. People buy from people. That's what happens. And people buy on an emotional level. There's all these studies on this about what is the reason why people buy. And even nowadays, when people are talking about customer retention and what's going to happen in this economic climate, there are studies that were done that show that the big reason that companies stay or that people stay and are retained is not so much about the product and the price, although those are important. It's how they feel when they interact with that vendor or with that company. And the feeling is how they connect on an emotional level. So people need to be thinking about how their salespeople are telling stories, how you're positioning your strategic narrative, how you're talking about your why in a way where they actually connect and resonate with other people. Like, for instance, at Gong, the RY is our CEO, Amit. He was CEO of another company, Sisense, and everything was going great. And they were hitting their numbers. And then just one day, one quarter, they missed. And he tried to figure out what happened. Why did they miss? And he asked some people, and people gave different answers. And then he tried to look in the CRM, and he couldn't figure it out because nothing was really logged there. Then he tried to, just years ago, tried to listen to some calls, but he couldn't listen to enough calls and they weren't all recorded. And he figured, you know what, this has got to be a problem with other companies where they want to know what is truly happening. Like, what is really happening in their sales? What's happening in their pipeline? What is it that customers are saying and wanting? And what do they not like? And that's why he started Gong. And that kind of story, everyone can resonate and people can understand. And that is really coming to this baseline. Now, anyone that's on the call that's heard me speak before, I would be negligent if I didn't say like the token thing that I say in every single podcast. And the way to build high performance teams and to retain high performance teams all come down to the people. So people always ask me, hey, Kelly, in your board work and in building these companies and in what you teach in your class, like, what should we do in different stages? Like, so if we're in the startup stage, or we're going to go public stage, or we're expanding internationally, or, we're driving more operational efficiency, what should be our top priorities right now? And they think there should be a different answer every time. And here's my answer to that. And if people take nothing else away from today's session, please take this, because my 3 priorities are always the same. regardless of company, regardless of stage, regardless of situation, and they always will be the same. So what are my 3 priorities? Number 1 is people.
Right.
Number 2 is people.
I think I know where this is going.
And number 3 is people. And why is that? Because it's not about just processes and operational efficiency and systems and tools. It's really people that make the world go round, right? It's people who are building our product and services. It's people who are selling and engaging with other customers. It's people who are hiring other people on our team. It's people who are managing those people. It's people who are making decisions. So in the beginning and in the end, it's people who are making companies. And what we can all think about as salespeople, as go-to-market leaders, as executives, it really all comes down to people, people, people. How can we engage them in a way where our employees can be set up for success and bring their best authentic self to work and be really connected to our purpose and our mission of what we're doing? How can we connect with people and how we're selling to be able to engage on an emotional level where we're really helping them, not only with their problems at work and at their company, but helping them personally? And then it's all about just people of how we set up this culture where we can go back to what you talked about, Pete, of creating a movement, not just creating a company, but creating this orbit and culture that are like, this is what we talk about at Gong, raving fans that just really want to be part of what we're doing. And because it makes them feel good and it makes them better. And that's what it's all about. So remember that people, people, people.
Right. And I think this is something that folks oftentimes, miss out on, is they're really focused on like process or technology or whatever, but it's people, process, and technology, right? And the people is
people
the
comes
first thing.
first, but technology is super important too, of course.
Right.
Technology, especially now, can help us do more with less in this time.
Right, because it levers up your people, right? But it exists to lever up your people to make them more effective. I think there is something that people are kind of thinking about how technology can like make them better off in a turbulent environment and what have you. Obviously Gong is well positioned to kind of help with that. I think you guys have done like some recent kind of like product announcements as well. Is there anything you wanted to share around how you see your customers using Gong, kind of help them in the current climate?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so technology helps, right? And especially in this climate where people want to do more with less. We have to be more effective. We have to be more efficient. We really need to understand what's happening in our customers. And so we have a few things that we've introduced. We have our Gong reality platform, which is what we've talked a lot about today. And what we do is, in an autonomous way, we can capture everything that's happening in those conversations, be able to diagnose and understand what's happening. But we also have another product that we are just about to launch called Gong Assist, where we will give you prescriptive action or give you prescriptive guidance with actionable insights of what to do next, and make it very, very easy to tap into the data and say, based on the information, what should you do next, and just save people a ton of time. The other thing that we just announced is Gong Forecast. So Gong Forecast, tons of companies are thinking about forecast, but the challenge is people put in a number, and if there's a risk in that forecast or wanting to understand what's happening, people can't actually see what is happening underneath it. And by having Gong Forecast on top of the Gong reality platform, you can say, is this deal real? Is this changing? Is this forecast appropriate? And for all of you out there that don't know that we launched Gong Forecast, we just launched it. It's very, very quick and easy to turn on. It just sits right on top of Gong. And then you can be able to inspect everything that's happening in your deals to be able to validate if your forecast is right. So everyone, please go check it out.
Right. Hey, so this deal looks like it's in commit and with a close date in 2 weeks. But according to this, budget and purchase process hasn't been talked about yet.
Hey, you know what, Pete? There's one other interesting thing. Not only forecast, but we just released something called Economic Pulse, which
Mm.
is saying we've used our robust AI to be able to inform, like to take all these trackers, economy, whatever it is in terms of payment freezes, hiring freezes, layoffs, all of those words come up. And then you can run it in your customer conversations to say, hey, if you have a deal that's in commit, not only can you inspect it and forecast, but you can actually identify risks that are happening based on anything related to the current economy that your customers are saying in those customer conversations. So really cool stuff.
I love it. Well, Kelly, unfortunately, we're out of time. I told you that this was just going to fly by because it was so much fun geeking
So
out with
much
you
fun.
on all these different topics. I think the one thing that I wanted to share before we break here is you guys are in the middle of your Gong Celebrate Roadshow. I think we're going to drop the link in here just so people, and, people want to see more about like what's going on with Gong, et cetera. They can join that. I think Eduardo, you wanted to give people a run through of kind of like what's coming up next in terms of the next event that's happening. Kelly, this was absolutely fantastic. I really appreciate you making yourself available for this. Eduardo, what do we have up? What do we have up next here?
Well, first of all, Pete and Khalid, this was awesome. I will have to get a new notebook because I filled mine with notes just with this one, and I still have 2 more panels to go today. So let's check the agenda here. We have coming up another chat with Pete, and we have Pete joining other superstar CEOs, COOs, and CROs today. So do not miss out. The next up thing is the Fireside chat with Pete and Henry Schuck, the CEO at Zoom Info, and I'm sure this will be amazing as this one with Kelly was. And if you're really enjoying this conversation, let me put a link in the chat right now so you can send to your friends and be like, hey, there's another fireside chat coming up. Let's join because the last one was amazing. And they can join right now. And don't miss out. This fireside chat will be in the Modern Sales Pros past events website, so you can come back and hear all the wisdom from Kelly again and from Pete too. And we will also send a follow-up email with the links so you can check. And while the panelists and I hang out backstage, you will check the agenda and sign up for the next events. So I'll see you in the next one. Pete and Carl,
Cool.
let's go backstage.
Thank
Cool.
you so much, everyone.